that was the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the suffering and the recognition of like all the striving that we do. um this is the first noble truth: life is suffering. And whenever I speak about this to my friends, um and several different people, there's usually a lot of resistance to that, to life is suffering. It's like what do you mean life is suffering? Like, oh, I love, like, I enjoy my life is great, like I'm happy. And maybe the way that it's phrased is problematic, because like, oh, life is not just suffering. But I think there is something there that it's like, well, there's actually this satisfaction with everything, as long as there's an ego, as long as there's a you, as long as there's some kind of striving or a sense of a doer. There's always this little subtle anxiety that's in the back, and it's so subtle, and it's so, like, we're so skilled at hiding it, and like, oh, I'm happy, everything's good, that I truly believe like most people just don't, like, it's truly unconscious, like they don't recognize it, they don't see it. And my experience is like the beginning of a spiritual path is actually that recognition of, oh, I'm fucking suffering, and there's a lot of suffering, and like everything that I'm trying to do is leading, like even the good things, the things like when I'm winning, like you said, when I'm on top, it's like I'm trying to keep it here. It's like if I made a lot of money, well, now I'm worried that I might lose it. Like there's always this sense of gain and loss. And yeah, like I'm curious, like if you feel like there was something there that shifted for you, that like you recognize, oh, there is actually a lot of suffering. Because like I'm always curious about that, and it's just, it's a weird thing to talk to about people, because I never want to like impose and tell people like life is suffering, because then it makes it seem like it's like it's almost like a dark or negative framing, and people naturally resist it. But it's like, if you really pay attention to your experience, how is that not the case?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's hard to speak for, everybody else. I kind of envy some people that are maybe completely blissful and
Never suffer, right? I
just
don't
happy
believe
with
I don't believe those people.
just happy with their lives and all that stuff. I mean, I I think yes, I think that there was a recognition of that. Um, I mean, I don't know. I was always kind of a kid that was focused on dying. I remember, when I was younger, I used to remember I was close to my grandparents, and I would hug my grandmother goodbye. I would think I was probably 11 years old or something like that. And I think my grandmother said to my mom, like, he hugs me like he's not going to see me ever again, you know? And she was right. I was hugging her like I would never see her again, you know? And for whatever reason, I think that was always a part of things for me. And the way I grew up, my dad, one of the first books my dad ever read me when I was a kid is The Little Engine That Could. I don't know if you've heard of that book. It's a
Of
children's
course,
book.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. So I was always kind of like grew up on that, like, hey, you can do it. You can accomplish it. You could play for the Yankees. Do you know what? You know how much I get made fun of in my in Great Neck, New York, a Jewish kid from Long Island. With all my peers, like, I'm gonna play for the Yankees. Oh, there's Adam. He's got a batting cage in his backyard. He's fucking nuts. Like the the what that does to you, as a kid, because you're trying to fit in also. Um, but yeah, like, I think a lot of it goes to, at least for me, is trying to substantiate myself through this. Like, oh, if I could just get this and get to the other end of the rainbow, then life will be good.
Then I'll be happy.
I'll have this. Like, I want to get this, or I want to get the most out of myself. I want to achieve. Like, I want to be that opera singer. You know, I want to, I want to become something. You know, the thought of becoming, and sort of why that was there for me. Um, I've contemplated that one quite a bit. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think that the suffering is for sure there. I mean, anything that it's all impermanent, you know? So it's like you can get to whatever you achieve in life, and the thrill of it probably won't last. And then, you know, you're kind of doing that thing over and over again. And then if you really kind of go up long term, it's like, yeah, I'm going to do this all the time. And, you know, then I'm going to die, you know, or I used to see people at the law firm I worked at, you know, and they'd start just freaking out over stuff and all the pressure, you know, and the way people scream at each other and treat each other like shit, you know. And I mean, you ever notice how, and I'm talking about myself too, you know, people are very quick to get angry. Like they scream at a waiter if the waiter doesn't bring them their food fast enough, you know, stuff like that, you know. That's all people letting out that anger. Like, why, you know,
Suffering, because they're
why?
suffering.
Yeah,
They're
why?
suffering.
Why are we doing that? You know, I remember I was watching football this past season and some guy dropped a pass in the end zone, you know, and Twitter went nuts. Like, this guy's a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. It's like, wow. Like, literally, it was trending. People just talking about this. The guy dropped the football in the end zone, right? In an invented game called football. It's an invention. It's a human conceptual invention, you know, that we make important, you know, and but think about that. Like there's something going on there, you know, that why am I so unhappy that if some athlete doesn't hit a home run and win the game, that I'm flipping out and going nuts and punching a hole through a wall. Oh, but my life's fantastic. I'm happy, you know. So sure, uh, you know, I think it's tough to get really honest with yourself and just about like what life's all about and contemplate it. And I don't know, I do that, you do that, but you know, that's what I got to say on that subject, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about like that wanting to become or wanting to get, and that's like the craving, right? The craving, that condition. Like there's always that little craving of like, if I can just, if like it was just a little bit cooler, if it was just a little bit warmer, or if I could just have another piece of chocolate cake, then I would be satisfied. Or whatever, if I just got a little more views on my video or on my song. There's just always that like like pervasive little thing that's, you know, that's the self, that's the ego, that's what the ego does. It just is always looking, it's always seeking, uh I don't know for what, to perpetuate its own illusion. um but yeah, there was a lot of other
Well, I
issues.
was going to say it's
Yeah.
interesting, you know, thinking about why, you know, I mean, that's, you know, I remember in Daniel Ingham's book, actually, he writes in one of his chapters, I forget exactly what he said. And sorry, Daniel, I don't want to misquote you if this ever, but he basically says that like if you if you could realize like what it is that starts this wanting in the first place, you would be highly realized, something like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I remember
um,
something like that. Yeah.
because you know if you think about it, we're all in this kind of like very vulnerable position, you know. Like once when you talk about why we're all in a very vulnerable position, you know. Here's little me, right? And here's the whole world. That's not me. No, and I'm gonna die. And I'm very vulnerable to somehow deep. deep down inside, I know that I'm very vulnerable to death and I'm going to die. And what was the also thing I was to realize? So I'm vulnerable, gonna die, and so yes, like what starting from that truth, you know, it's like, oh, I want more, I want a better position, I want more stuff, you know, it's survival, you know. And the thing about survival, and actually Peter Ralston writes about this, is like you're playing a game that you're going to lose because one day you'll die, you know? So it's like when you're trying to survive better, you know, which is kind of where the domain of this falls into. Like, oh my, I want this, I want that, I want pleasure, I don't want pain, you know, I want to run for this, I want to go towards that, all this stuff. He calls it kind of cheese chasing, like a hamster on a wheel that's chasing a cheese that he'll never obtain, or your unobtainable survival agenda, or things like that. He's actually fabulous, in my opinion, on this stuff to really contemplate what he writes. You know, but it's like, think about that. You know, as a human being, you're playing a game that you're going to fail. No matter how much you succeed, you're going to fail. You know, like that's an existential bind.
Yeah, if you're playing the finite game, if you're playing the game of the ego, as long as
Yeah,
you're playing if that game, then
but you're going to try to survive, and what even you know even and this goes even to, you know, even if you get beyond the ego. I mean, just the act of me holding this water bottle and me and you. I mean, this is all survival at work here. Um, so you know, it's it's really yeah. I mean, he does great work on this, but like yeah, I think it's really true. That I mean, and that's why, you know, you start to get into, I think, spiritual practices, because it's sort of like like, okay, how am I going to get myself out of this? You know, what is the way out of what's the way out of this situation? You know, seriously, like what is the way out of this situation? Um, of why I'm suffering. I mean, and you know, yeah, I mean that's I think that's one of the biggest questions a human being can ask themselves. And it's a very difficult question, because I think that, you know, it leads to a lot of uncomfortable truths. And I think that the one thing I've always tried to do since I started this process, and it's hard, is be honest, you know, be honest with myself, whether I'm like meditating or whatever a spiritual attainment I have, like be honest about what my experience is actually like, you know. um, for example, you know, there are a lot of people that say, oh well, the world is all one, you know, the world is one, we're all in this together, well, the world is one, right? But the thing is, and I was talking about this with my friend the other day, like if you actually experience the world as one, you know, you wouldn't be, because you're you're a separate self, like looking at the world. So the subject is looking at the object, saying it's one, but that's not one, right? So, and that's what I mean by being honest about my experience, and like, what are my real motivations? You know, when I go cheese chasing and I think the next accomplishment will solve this, or you know, what's actually going on, and getting honest with myself, not caring if what's going to happen is going to hurt me, because the truth might actually be uncomfortable, you know. Um, and I think that process of honesty and looking at your reality in, when using some of these spiritual practices, I think is very, very helpful.